right, so on the ACT, we are going to see lots of questions involving punctuation. Typically, it's not going to be like, should this be a period, a question mark, or an exclamation mark? It's not going to be that basic. Most of them are more about commas, semicolons, colons, that types of thing. Remember, though, a complete idea has to have both the subject and the verb. Those are like your stop punctuation, things that would end a sentence. So it could be your period, exclamation mark, question mark, but also semicolons can be used at the end of a complete thought. If you want to join two sentences together, you can either have two separate sentences or you can put a semicolon in between. So those are like your stop punctuation. The only time you should see those is after a complete thought, subject and a verb. Then when we were watching that little video the other day, it did talk about conjunctions. Those are when you need a comma with them. The trick for remembering some of those words was fanboys. So your common conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. That's where the fanboys comes from. And when you see those words, you should be looking at your comma usage. So typically there is a comma associated with those. All right, take a second, look at this one, pick an answer. If I look at my answer choices, what are we measuring here? It's all about punctuation, right? So when I look at this, I think of the two parts. The bird began to dance. Is that a complete sentence? Yes. After the thumping music started. No, that one is not. You're waiting to see what happened after the music started. So we can't have that stop punctuation there. We can't have a period. And if you can't have a period, then you can't have the semicolon because both of those are with complete thoughts. So we've got it narrowed down to both B and C. So we know we would put a comma after started. Would you also put one after began? No. These questions, a lot of times it'll be just a small thing, like a comma at the end, and people get in a hurry. They see that comma after started, and they knew they wanted it, and they circle that answer really quick. So just make sure you're watching. A lot of times there might be another comma at the end of that clause in the answer choices. So make sure you pick the one that you really want. All right, things to keep in mind with punctuation. We are not trying to make the sentence longer than necessary. This is not an English essay where you have to write 500 words, so you're trying to be wordy. Okay, ACT is all about short and concise. Say it in as few words as necessary. Within a sentence, your punctuation is only used to avoid error or to make our meaning clear. You know, when we talk, there are lots of different places you could add a comma, right? Just depending on if you were typing up what I say, when I pause, you could put a comma there. But on the ACT, we are only putting it if it's grammatically necessary. Does that make sense? So not just where it could go and make sense, but only when it's necessary to make sense. Your go punctuation. So stop is end of complete thought. If it's not a complete thought, that's your go punctuation. So like your commas, sometimes you don't need anything at all. You use that anytime except when you have two complete ideas. So if you have a complete idea and an incomplete idea, or two incomplete ideas, that's when you're using your commas. All right, try this one. I wondered how Snowball had learned to dance and asked his trainer. So when I'm looking at this, my choices, I can tell it's all about that punctuation after dance. This had a comma. Do I need a semicolon, a period, or nothing at all? That's my option. So first decide, are these two complete thoughts? I wondered how Snowball had learned to dance. Is that a complete thought? Yes. And asked his trainer. Is that a complete thought? Not with the word and there, right? If I had said, like, I asked his trainer, if we put a subject there instead, it would be. But right now, asked his trainer doesn't have a subject. So I can't use that stop punctuation. I can't have a period or a semicolon there. So, do we need the comma or not? I wondered how Snowball had learned to dance and asked his trainer. Does it make sense without a comma there? Yeah, is there any grammatical reason why I would have to have a comma? No. So on the ACT, even though in talking, sure, you could pause there and a comma indicates a pause, but there's no grammatical reason we would have to have it. So oh, yes, sorry. It had the comma. We don't need it. G. No comma needed. All right, so talking about the reasons that you might have or might require a comma. If you are joining two complete ideas with one of those conjunctions, the for, and, nor, but, those, then you need a comma. So the music changed suddenly, but Snowball picked up the new beat. So you would have to have that comma along with your conjunction. And if you have a complete and an incomplete idea. So after Snowball stopped dancing, the trainer gave the bird another treat. After Snowball stopped dancing is not a complete idea. It starts, we have our verb, our action stuff, but we need more there. So that one's incomplete. However, the second half of it, the trainer gave the bird another treat, that's a complete idea. So a complete and an incomplete idea. Same thing here. Snowball rocked out to Lady Gaga, oblivious to the growing crowd of fans. Okay, this time, the first half of it is a complete thought. Why is oblivious to the growing crowd of fans? Why is that not a complete thought? What's it missing? It doesn't have a subject. Yep. All right. We also use commas if we are separating things in a list. So Snowball prefers songs with a regular funky beat. So you are listing two things there. You have to have a comma. Snowball seems to like the best the music of Backstreet Boys, Lady Gaga, and Queen. So we're listing that comma there. One thing to note, when you are listing, there is a little bit of a discrepancy if you're saying, I like apples, oranges, bananas, and pears. Some places say you should put a comma before you say the and pears, and some say you don't. On the ACT, you always use the comma before and on a list. So if you're listing multiple things, you still put the comma before and. There are some sources that say you don't, but that is how they assess it. We can also put commas around unnecessary information. So further research has shown that parrots, including cockatoos, can dance to perform in perfect sync to music. The including cockatoos, I could take that entire phrase out of the sentence and it still makes sense. So that's why it's set off in commas. You have a comma before and after in that situation. So just a couple things then. Look out for your commas in words or phrases in a series. If you are listing multiple things, you have your comma. Introductory words or phrases. So if I said, give me a sentence that has an introductory word to it. Why can't I think of a good example right now? It's like, hello, said the teacher to the class. Hello is an introductory phrase, so that would be set off with a comma. Mid-sentence phrases that are not essential. So anything, if it could be taken out and it still makes sense, you need to set it off with commas before and after. All right, so there's a couple questions. I want you guys to read them and try them, please. Many people point to dog dancing competitions to argue that birds are not the only animals that can dance. So, if I look at my answer choices, we are trying to decide, first of all, should there be a comma after the word argue? Second of all, should there be a comma after the word animals? Those are my issues. Many people point to dog dancing competitions to argue. Do I need a comma after argue there? No. Okay, so I know I can mark off this one and this one. So we don't have a comma here. We're not setting off a phrase. We don't have unnecessary information there. To argue that birds are not the only animals, would you put a comma here? No, that doesn't make sense either. This sentence did not need any commas. There is no change. All right, scientists now believe that the ability to mimic, which only some creatures are capable of acquiring, is necessary for an animal to keep a synchronized beat. So we are looking for my answer choices. First of all, do I need a comma after mimic? Do I need a comma after which? All right. So if I look, the original one had a comma after mimic and a comma after capable. Do I need both of those? No. I'm not setting out or setting off a whole phrase that's unnecessary there. So do we need one after the word mimic? Scientists now believe that the ability to mimic, which only some creatures are capable of. Do I need a comma? Yes, because that which is kind of changing direction. So we definitely need a comma after mimic, so I've narrowed down that one. All right, do I need another one after the word which? Would that make sense? No. So this one is G. All right, any questions about our comma usage? All right, colons and dashes. We can also see those being used to link complete ideas to either an incomplete or another complete idea. So it can be used to link a complete and an incomplete or two complete ideas. If one of them is incomplete, the complete idea has to come first. The second then would be like a definition, an explanation, or a list. So try this question. All right. Even among those animals that can mimic, such as non-human primates, including chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans, the ability to keep it a beat is rare. What did you guys pick? D. We are using the hyphens here to set apart that phrase. So you would actually have it at the beginning and end. You can kind of tell if you're not sure just by process of elimination. If I look at it as it's written, it's kind of awkward to start with a comma, but to end that with a hyphen, so that's kind of a red flag there. We weren't really consistent. We obviously need some kind of comma so we can narrow that out. We wouldn't also put a comma after the word such, so we can do process of elimination there. Parents don't respond well to genres with the least noticeable upbeat, waltzes and salsa. Okay, remember, when do I use a semicolon? Two complete thoughts. Okay. Parents don't respond well to genres with the least noticeable upbeat. Is that a complete thought? Yes. Waltzes and salsa. Is that a complete thought? No. So I cannot use that semicolon. We also can't have a period there, which wasn't an option. So we have to decide, do I want a comma? So commas can help set things apart, but we don't want to make it confusing. So we could do a comma, but does that clarify our sentence at all? Not really. How else can you set it apart? What would I use then instead of a comma to join a complete and an incomplete thought? We use a colon. Okay, so I've got it down to one of those. Do I need a comma after the word waltzes? We use commas in a list if you're separating 3 or more things. Since there's only 2, that comma isn't needed, so it's J. Alright, last one we're doing out of the packet today. A waltz is particularly difficult. It follows a 3-beat pattern. So if I'm looking at this, a waltz is particularly difficult. Is that a complete thought? Yes. It follows a 3-beat pattern. Is that a complete thought? Yes. Can hyphens be used to join 2 complete thoughts? Yes. Bless you. So this one is a no change.